Welcome to Chat, Communications, Happenings, and Trends, with your host, Amanda Cumming, and producer, Janet Louise Meyer. Thank you for listening.
So The Intercept has come out with an article basically identifying a new bill that two senators have basically proposed, and actually is a bipartisan bill created by Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee and also by Senator Tim Kaine. And this bipartisan bill would basically allow the president unchecked authority to imprison any U.S. citizen indefinitely, as long as he felt that they were somehow a threat to the United States. Now, this all kind of came about essentially after 9/11 attacks occurred. There was the Authorization for Use of Military Force Act was imposed, and that basically gave the executive branch and the president obviously some unchecked powers, but it was further extended under the Obama administration in 2012 with the National Defense Authorization Act. And this act essentially gave the President Obama at the time, authority to basically do the insane thing, imprison U.S. citizens without many checks. However, they had a few involved, one being that they had to be somehow involved in the 9/11 attacks. They had to be supportive of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, or, and this is a very vague term, associated forces. Now, it is that term that a lot of people picked up upon in 2012, including Senator Bernie Sanders, who was adamantly against this bill, as was Senator Rand Paul. Moving right along. So this bill has come about because I think they believe, both Kaine and Corker somehow believe that the new Authorization of Military Force Act, I guess of 2018, that they have proposed would somehow cause the Congress to come together and then decide about the president's use of power and force in military-like situations. However, the bill has basically thrown out that language and I was telling Janet earlier that this to me felt like a more of a ask for forgiveness type of bill, to where the president could come along with a list of known combatants or known enemy forces or associated forces, that term again, and say that anybody in the United States that the president did not like or did not approve of, that criticized the government, was associated with associated forces that is against the state. So they would have to, I guess the Congress would have to congregate and then decide if the president was correct in his assessment, or if he had that authority to actually imprison the person that he felt was had a relationship to associated forces. However, we know how Congress operates. They would probably not be able to come together very easily to make that decision, which is usually why you give the use of power and authority like this in times of war, the use of military force and military imprisonment, to the Congress, and then they decide, and then they tell the president. But this is the reversing that power play, to where the president then goes and tells the Congress. And that's a terrible precedent to actually set. And if you are, I'm already under the impression that we have been under some sort of authoritarian rule for a long time. President Barack Obama had the opportunity to veto the 2012 version, the NDAA version of this bill, and he failed to do so, with the understanding that he would not employ that use himself. And here we are today arguing what type of presidential power the president should have, and reasonably concerned about it, because we're talking about the president being Donald Trump, and he is inclined to authoritarianism already, and could subsequently decide that anybody he just doesn't like is somehow in league with associated forces that he just decides to put on the associated forces lists at the time. And then Congress, after the person has been imprisoned, by the way, you can just say, military, go imprison Janet because she makes meetings that I don't like. And then Janet's in prison while the Congress determines if she should be there or not. How is that? That's so fucked up. And so again, this is a bipartisan bill, by the way. This is bipartisan. There's 6 senators that are on board now, at least. And that, again, it's from, I guess it was created by both Tim Kaine, who is a supposed Democrat, and Bob Corker, who is a clear right-wing Republican. And bipartisan because, again, the Democrats are fucking right-wing. That's why. And they're authoritarian by nature. 2, all we have is an authoritarian government that's representing us. So I think people should be reasonably outraged by this. One of the things that was included here was that it could imprison, again, pretty much anyone who has an association with forces, does a belligerent act. What does that mean? And again, is somehow directly supporting the associated forces. So all of these are such vague terms that the president could deploy those and use those vague terms against any United States citizen. It's a very dense article. I'm reading, we got this from The Intercept again. It's a very dense article, and I do encourage everybody to at least look through it because, again, nobody's really talking about this aspect of this bill that has been created and proposed by these 2 senators. So, Jan, I'm going to pass this off to you. What is your take on this bill?
Hey, so, well, my first thought when I was reading it was, wait a sec, they just tabled the Yemen resolution. That was for any good that they want to come from this bill. The Yemen resolution was the start of it, anyhow. Now, what they're going to do with writing this AUMF, they're literally going to just give him more power. I mean, what they were trying to do with the Yemen resolution was take that power away, but this is actually just giving him, or any sitting president, I should say, even more power. And that, I mean, he doesn't. We don't need to have that. We don't need one person having this much power. That's not what this country was built on. We didn't want that. That's what we were trying to get away from. So, I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous.
Yes, the country was built on the principle that we wanted no kings. Yeah. Kings had the kind of authority to basically imprison whomever, whenever, wherever. And this is giving the president that kind of authority.
Yep. So, I mean, it's another way of them. It's just scary. Like, the more you see this stuff, you know, at first, I think when people were saying, oh, you know, we're heading towards this, you know, authoritative state. And I was just kind of like, you know, it's just a president. He doesn't have that much power. But now we're like slowly giving him, I mean, over the time since, like, well, before that, but even like with Bush and Obama, we slowly gave the president more and more and more power. And we didn't back any of that out. And now they're still going to continue to give the president even more power. I mean, does the Congress not want to do their job? Is that what it is? Because it doesn't seem to me like they want to do their job, because they don't want to represent us. So I have no clue. I don't know why they would even consider this. It's ridiculous. I mean, tighten up the verbiage on it or something. I mean, you know, like, you can't go forth and have, like, I mean, aren't a lot of these people lawyers too? I mean, I don't get it. Like, I just don't get it.
I mean, I think that, yes, a lot of them are attorneys, and they are playing dumb with this bill because they know that verbiage is everything. You have to have things explicitly stated. Otherwise, people take advantage of them or people use it to their advantage. And that's why people have to phrase things very clearly and precisely. And when you fail to do so, and you're subsequently called out on that failure, yet you make no corrections, you simply justify it. You say, well, the president won't do this. We are operating in good faith. Do not operate in good faith. You cannot assume that. You can't assume that for any sitting president, period. It needs to be clear. Every bill does need to have clarity. Otherwise, they get turned against you and against the people. Now, to your previous point, as far as like, well, do they actually want to do their jobs? What is their job? Their job is to work for their donors. Their donors are the ruling class. The ruling class has an incentive to assure that people, us, stay in too tight control so that they continue to be the ruling class. And so as long as they maintain that kind of relationship, they are doing their job. So they're doing their job, just their job isn't for us, right? It isn't to work for us, it's to work for the ruling class. And I think that this definitely could easily be used against anybody who talks poorly against the government, who calls them out on bills like this, who, like you do those memes about, making fun of Democratic senators and representatives. And somebody, yeah, I don't like your memes, Janet. Go to prison.
But you imagine the GSA too.
They could do that. I mean, there's authoritarian governments right now that's more authoritarian than us that have imprisoned people for less than that have imprisoned people for a fucking tweet.
Well, any protesting, any protester. You had mentioned the DSA. What if they just decide, oh, well, the DSA is one of those groups now, and so now we have 35,000 members of the DSA that are on a list, and we could hold them indefinitely if that's what they decided to do. It's just amazing to me that people aren't more upset about this, and they're not talking about it more, and especially like you would think the media too, because that is a big play into the media too, because if you think about it, they can totally go against what if someone printed something they didn't like or anything like that. You would think that people would be outraged and totally against this bill.
I think that the general populace is or would be, right? I think that if people knew what this bill could do, but I think, again, the media has an incentive to keep people in the dark. Like Ron Cohn was saying, right, that the media isn't really in the business of news. It's in the business of working for the oligarchs. And that is 100% correct. So if you had real media, like The Intercept is doing, real media right here, by saying this is a problematic bill, guys, wake up, hello. But you don't have CNN, you don't have MSNBC, Fox News saying shit about it. That should show you the state of our media and who actually they work for, because they should be in Fox News should be in such a little tizzy over this, because if this was Barack Obama, or, well, I don't know what's Hillary Clinton. I have no idea. Definitely, if the Congress was trying to do this for Bernie Sanders, if he was president, could you imagine the shitstorm that that they would heave upon the president and the Congress for even thinking about something like this? But the media doesn't work for us. They just don't, and this exemplifies that. It's just such a great example of how they're not working for us.
Another one down.
So yeah, go read this. This is it's a kind of a dense article, but I do recommend you go check it out.
You just listened to another episode of Chat, Communications, Happenings, and Trends. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Also, head on over to our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/ActifyChat and help us bring more content to you by supporting us. Thank you, and keep fighting the good fight, my